The man in the back row, the sun was barely rising over Los Angeles when Keanu Reeves stepped out of his apartment in a plain black hoodie and jeans. His car was an old motorcycle. No one noticed him as he passed streetlights and sleepy diners. He liked it that way today. He wasn't heading to a film set. He was going to a school. Not as a guest speaker, not to promote a film, but to keep a promise. A year ago, Keanu had met a woman named Mrs. Aurora. She had been his math tutor's daughter. At a small fundraiser event, she had spoken about a failing school in East Los Angeles where she worked as a part-time teacher. The students were brilliant, she said, but their confidence was broken. They were treated like they didn't matter. The system had forgotten them. Keanu had asked quietly, "How can I help?" She had replied, "Just show them someone believes in them." He said, "Done." That's how he found himself walking up the cracked steps of Garland Valley High School, a forgotten place with faded lockers, peeling paint, and metal detectors at the front door. Students passed him without a second glance. A tall man in a hoodie didn't mean much in this world. He liked that. Inside the main office, the secretary looked up. "You're here for what again?" Keanu smiled, just observing. "Recognize him. You can sit in the back of room 3B, she said flatly. "Mr. Donovan's class? Advanced math?" Mr. Donovan was already standing at the front of his classroom when Keanu stepped in. He was in his late 40s, wore a sharp tie, and had a voice that cut through the air like a knife. His classroom was silent. No one dared speak when he lectured. Keanu nodded politely and took a seat in the far back corner. Students turned their heads slightly, curious. Who was this quiet stranger? No one said a word. Mr. Donovan cleared his throat. "Today," he said, "we'll be working on a problem that will separate the truly smart from the average." He turned to the board and wrote in bold strokes, "The unsolved function." Students leaned in. Notebooks opened. "This problem," Mr. Donovan said, "has been known to stump even college graduates. I doubt anyone in this room will even get close, but it's good for humility." Some students exchanged nervous glances. Keanu watched silently as the class scribbled away, struggling through the equations. Mr. Donovan paced between rows, occasionally smirking at wrong answers. He wasn't cruel, but he carried an arrogance that weighed down the room. Near the back, a young girl named Lisa hesitated before raising her hand. "Sir, I think maybe if we factored the denominator—" "No," Mr. Donovan snapped. "You're guessing. Don't guess in my class." Lisa sank into her chair. Keanu's single quotes eyes narrowed slightly. After 20 minutes, only frustration filled the room. Notebooks had scribbles and crossed out lines. Some students looked defeated. "Just as I thought," Mr. Donovan said. "Too difficult for this level." He turned to erase the board. Keanu raised his hand, quietly, respectfully. The class turned, in surprise. Even Mr. Donovan paused. "Yes?" he asked, almost amused. Keanu stood slowly, walking toward the board. "May I asked softly. "Be my guest," Mr. Donovan said, folding his arms. Keanu picked up the marker. For a moment he just stared. At the problem, the room went silent. Then he began writing .FLUIDLY. Calmly, line by line. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He rewrote the equation using a substitution method that most hadn't seen before. The class leaned in. Lisa's eyes widened. Keanu factored terms, simplified expressions, and then applied a technique used only in certain upper-level courses. When he stepped back 5 minutes later, the solution was clear, correct, precise, beautiful. Silence then. A few scattered gasps. Even Mr. Donovan was frozen. "That's possible," he whispered. Keanu turned and shrugged. "Just remembered something my tutor once taught me," she said. "The problem isn't the math, it's the way we look at it." The class burst into quiet murmurs. Someone near the front whispered, "Who is he?" Mr. Donovan recovered quickly. "Well, impressive, mister?" "Just Keanu," he said. During the break, students gathered near Keanu. Some asked questions. Others just stood close, watching him like he wasn't real. Lisa came up, notebook in hand. You believed in my approach, she said softly. I saw how you thought, Keanu replied. That's more important than the answer, she smiled. Shyly at lunch, Keanu sat in the cafeteria with the students. No cameras, no announcements. Just simple food and real conversation. He asked about their dreams, what they wanted to do, why they felt school wasn't helping. One boy said, They think we're dumb just 'cause we're poor. Another said, I want to be an engineer. But no one takes me seriously. Keanu listened, not with pity, but with presence. And then he said something that made Lisa tear up. Genius doesn't belong to rich kids. It belongs to the ones who keep asking questions when everyone else gives up. That day, Garland Valley High School changed. Not because a celebrity walked in, but because a man sat down with them. Not above them, not in front of them, but beside them. After school ended, Mr. Donovan approached Keanu outside. He was no longer smirking. I looked you up, he said. You really studied quantum logic for fun? Keanu smiled. Still do sometimes, Mr. Donovan hesitated. I was wrong about you and maybe about them. Keanu put a hand on his shoulder. Then maybe today's the day we all learn something. What none of them knew was that this moment, this single class, this one math problem would start a ripple that would reach places they could never imagine. Within weeks, something would happen that no one saw coming. A letter A. Challenge. And a stage that would test not only Keanu's mind, but his soul. Asterisk, the letter that wasn't meant to be open at WA days had passed since Keanu Reeves quietly solved the unsolvable math problem in Mr. Donovan's classroom at Garland Valley High School. Students were still talking about it in hushed, excited tones. Lisa, the quiet girl who had tried to speak up during the lesson, now walked with more confidence. Even the janitor had heard about the guy in the hoodie who beat the board, as the rumor now went. But Keanu, he was already back to his quiet life. No press, no photos, just a coffee, a walk through a bookstore, and time spent helping at the after-school center he supported. He didn't expect anything more from that day, but the world wasn't done with him yet. On a rainy Thursday morning, a sealed envelope arrived at his small home in Silver Lake. It had no sender, just a printed address inside. It was a formal letter on thick paper and a challenge. Dear Mr. Reeves, we are writing on behalf of the California Mathematical Excellence Society. We were recently informed of your spontaneous solution to what has long been known as the Valentine paradox, a problem many professionals have debated for years. We'd like to invite you to participate in the upcoming Scholars Summit to present your approach. While this event typically includes only active mathematicians and educators, we believe your insight deserves a platform. Respectfully, Dr. Richard Harrison, Director. Next Summit. Keanu stared at the letter for a long time. He had no desire for attention. But then he thought of Lisa and the boy who wanted to be an engineer, and the way Mr. Donovan's voice had softened. Maybe this wasn't about math. Maybe it was about who was watching. He picked up the phone, dialed, a number he hadn't used in years. A woman's voice answered. Keanu. Hey, Mrs. Aurora, he said softly. You remembered my number after all this time? How could I forget the person who taught me what infinity really means? She laughed warmly. How can I help? She asked. He told her everything about the class, about the problem, about the letter, and she paused for a moment before saying, You don't need to prove anything, Keanu. But maybe the world needs to see that humility and brilliance can live in the same room. He smiled. That's exactly what I needed to hear. A week later, Keanu quietly registered for the COMEX Summit. No special nameplate, no media attention, just K. Reeves on the list of participants. When the other speakers saw his name, some laughed. The actor. What's next? The pop star. Doing algebra? Others frowned. He's not qualified. He's just famous. But one person was furious. Dr. Evelyn Burns. She had spent her entire life climbing the academic ladder. Multiple PhD degrees, published work in international journals, and yet no one had ever invited her to present the Valentine paradox. Now, a movie star in jeans was getting the spotlight. He'll embarrass himself, she told her assistant. Or he'll embarrass us, the assistant whispered. At Garland Valley High, Mr. Donovan printed out the summit invitation and taped it to the board. Some students gasped. He's really going. They invited him? Lisa smiled to herself. He's going for us, she said, and she was right. The summit was held in a wide, modern auditorium with clean white walls and glass ceilings, rows of seats filled with professors, researchers, and students. Keanu entered quietly from a side door, wearing the same hoodie, same jeans, same calm face. But something about him had changed. This time, he wasn't just observing. He was ready to speak. Dr. Burns took the stage first. Her lecture was long, polished, and full of words few people in the room understood. She used phrases like recursive self-symmetry and advanced non-Euclidean regression models. People nodded, some clapped, but their eyes began to drift. Keanu watched from the side. He wasn't nervous, because he wasn't here to win. He was here to remind the room. Why problems were made to be solved, then people were made to be seen. His name was called. Some in the room sat up straighter. Others leaned back with folded arms as Keanu walked onto the stage. Few cameras flashed. He didn't touch the microphone for a long moment. Then finally he began. I don't have titles, he said. I don't have degrees. And I don't have complicated words. He paused. But I do have a memory of sitting in a small room with a kind woman who once told me, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room, just the most curious. People were listening now, really listening. Keanu pulled out a small whiteboard, and he began walking the audience through the same method he had used in Mr. Donovan's class. He broke the paradox into simple parts, explained. The thinking behind it invited people to question it along the way. His tone was soft, never proud, never flashy. But something incredible happened. People leaned forward, took notes, raised hands. Even Dr. Burns began frowning, not in anger, in disbelief, because he was right line by line. He rebuilt the problem in a way no one had ever tried. He didn't just solve the math, he made the room feel like they could solve it. 2. When he finished, the auditorium was silent. Then came the applause, slow at first, then louder, then standing, after the session. Professors lined up to speak with him, but Keanu didn't stay long. He walked through the side exit, where Lisa was waiting with her classmates. You were amazing, she said. Thank you, Keanu replied. But the real test isn't what you solve on a stage. It's how you treat people who never stand on one. The next morning, a headline quietly trended online. Keanu Reeves solves long-debated math. Paradox, but stays humble through it all. Comments poured in, not about the math, but about the way he carried himself. He makes you want to learn again. This is what real intelligence looks like. The world needs more Keanus. But Keanu never responded to the noise. He went back to Garland Valley, sat again in Mr. Donovan's class, not to teach, just to listen. Because real geniuses don't need the front of the room. They make every seat in the room feel important. Asterisk, when the board called his NEMA 3 weeks had passed since Keanu Reeves quietly walked off the Comex Summit stage. The world had reacted with surprise. Academics were divided, some inspired, others threatened. Social media was filled with clips of his simple whiteboard explanation, but while the internet was buzzing, Keanu was silent. He didn't give interviews, didn't celebrate, didn't brag. Instead, he returned to Garland Valley High, walking the same broken sidewalk with his old motorcycle helmet in hand. Students didn't treat him like a star anymore. They treated him like something better, a mentor. Inside the school, Lisa rushed through the hallway, clutching a folder filled with math papers. Mr. Reeves is here, she whispered to her friend Malik. Malik grinned. You think he'll help us prep for the scholarship exam? Already said he would, Lisa replied. But not just with math, with mindset. They turned the corner to see Keanu already seated in the empty classroom, helping a boy who had failed 3 tests in a row. You're not slow, Keanu was saying. You just learn differently. Meanwhile, in an air-conditioned boardroom, Across the city, a group of elite educators sat in serious discussion. A printed document was passed around. On the front was a photo of Keanu standing by the whiteboard at the summit. The heading read, "Recommendation for Honorary Membership, Keanu Reeves."
D-ball.
Her fingers were laced, jaw tight, I admit. "He surprised me," she said. His explanation was elegant, human, and most of all understandable. Others nodded, double quotes. "Then why do you sound hesitant?" Anne asked. "Because if we welcome him, we change the rules," she said. "No degrees, no published journals, just wisdom and heart. I'm not against it. I just want us to understand what it means." The room went quiet. Then the chairman, a quiet man with round glasses, finally spoke. "Perhaps it's time we remember what this society is for," he said. "Not to protect titles, but to share knowledge." A vote was held. The result was unanimous. Keanu Reeves would be honored as the first ever non-academic, inducted into the board as a symbol of applied intelligence and emotional learning. Back at Garland Valley, Mr. Donovan pulled Keanu aside after class. I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about the way I teach, the way I shut Lisa down that day." Keanu didn't say anything. Donovan looked down. "I was afraid of being challenged. I thought if students questioned me, it meant I'd lose control." "It doesn't," Keanu said gently. "It means you've built trust." Mr. Donovan nodded. "I want to change." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then start by asking more questions and giving fewer answers." The next week, Garland Valley hosted something new, a night school program called Math 4. All quotes free, open to anyone. Parents, kids, grandparents, and Keanu was the first volunteer. Teacher. He didn't use complicated terms. He used shapes, patterns, stories. Double quotes, "Math isn't about numbers," he said. "It's about patterns. And patterns are everywhere in music, in movement, even in how we speak." People who had once feared numbers began smiling, nodding, even laughing. An old janitor named Raphael whispered, "I never thought I'd enjoy this." Keanu looked at him. "It's not math you feared. It's being made to feel stupid, but you're not." Then something unexpected happened. The Board of Education called. They weren't offering him a title. They were asking for help. "We want to rebuild our approach to learning," the superintendent said. "Not just math, everything." Keanu was quiet for a moment, then said, "Start with your teachers." Soon, Keanu found himself invited into meetings with school leaders, policymakers, and learning specialists. But he never changed. He still wore the hood, still asked questions, still listened more than he spoke. He introduced a new term, dignity-based education. The idea was simple. Teach in a way that protects the student's dignity. Even when they fail, you can correct, he said, without crushing someone. Word spread. Schools across the country began calling Garland Valley, asking what changed. Lisa smiled during one interview and said, "Our mindset changed. We started believing that we mattered." One afternoon, as Keanu was leaving the school, Lisa handed him a small envelope. Inside was a card. On the front, a hand-drawn tree, made of numbers. On the back, a short message. "I used to be afraid of raising my hand. Now I want to raise others. Thank you for showing me that real genius listens." Keanu folded the card and placed it in his jacket pocket. He would carry it for years, and then came another twist. A global education summit was being hosted in Finland. World leaders, teachers, innovators. They wanted Keanu Reeves to be the keynote speaker. The invitation wasn't just about math anymore. It was about mindset. When Keanu told the students at Garland Valley, they clapped. Not because he was becoming more famous, but because he was taking them with him. On the day of his flight, Martha the janitor gave him a small bag of cookies. "You taught us how to believe again," she said. Keanu grinned. "You were always worth believing in." He boarded the plane with a backpack, a book, and no speech prepared. But his heart was full. He wasn't speaking to impress. He was speaking to remind the world of something it had forgotten. That the greatest minds don't always sit at the front. Sometimes they sit quietly in the back until they're called. And this time, the whole world was calling. The summit of Silence plane landed in Helsinki just as snowflakes began falling. The city glowed under a blanket of white as if it had dressed in quiet for something important. Keanu Reeves stepped off the plane with a small black backpack and a simple notebook in his coat pocket. He wore no formal suit. No press agents walked beside him. No crowd waited. But inside the summit hall, the seats were full. Presidents of universities, ministers of education, CEOs of tech companies. Everyone had come to hear about the future of learning. No one expected it to be delivered by a man in jeans and HUV. The Global Education Summit was the kind of event where people clapped before speeches even began, where titles were announced like medals, where every panel came with flashy slides. Keanu was scheduled to speak last at first. Some saw that as an insult. Later, they would realize it was a strategy, because the end would echo. In the lobby before his session, a tall man in a suit approached him. "Mr. Reeves," he said, "I'm Dr. Norberg, Chief Policy Advisor to the European Learning Commission. May I ask what your angle is?" Keanu smiled gently. Not here to change policies. I'm here to remind people why they were written in the first place." Norberg raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think we've forgotten?" Keanu looked out the window at a child holding their mother's hand. "In the snow, we forgot that a system isn't measured by the top 10%, but by how it lifts the other 90. Norberg didn't answer, but something in his expression softened. The audience settled. Keanu stepped onto the wide wooden stage. There was no podium, just a single microphone. No music, no lights flashing, just the sound of people breathing, waiting. He took his time, then began. "I was once told I couldn't sit at the smart table," he said quietly. Heads turned. "I wasn't fast. I wasn't loud. I didn't test well." A few in the room nodded. Others frowned. But then one teacher just once saw how I thought. And that changed everything. He paused. "Today I'm not here as an expert. I'm here as proof." Told them about Garland Valley, about Lisa, who once feared her voice, about the janitor who thought he couldn't learn. Math about a teacher who learned to ask instead of instruct, and about a school that changed not through money, but through mindset. "You don't need new buildings," he said. "You need new eyes." He shared his core belief. Dignity-based education isn't about easier content. It's about making hard things feel safe to try. No one learns when they feel ashamed. You could hear the emotion building in the room. Some lowered their heads. Others blinked away tears. The Minister of Education from Ghana wiped his glasses twice. Keanu closed his notebook. Though he had never opened it, he looked out across the silent hall and said, "Every student has a hidden formula. Not for math, but for blooming. Our job is not to fill them, it's to find them." He took a quiet breath, and when we do, we don't just change students, we change societies. Then he stepped back. No bow, no wave, just silence, followed by something no one expected. Everyone stood not to clap, but to reflect. Later at the dinner for keynote speakers, Keanu didn't show. He was already on a quiet train heading toward a school in rural Finland, a small place that had written to him weeks ago, saying, "We watched your classroom video. We want to believe our students can bloom too." He'd written back only one word: yes. Meanwhile, back in California, Lisa stood in front of her school's library. A crowd of students gathered as she pulled off the cloth covering a small plaque. The plaque read, "Room for Every Mind, inspired by K.R." Students clapped. Not because it was about a celebrity, but because it was about them. Mr. Donovan now taught differently. He started each class with a question instead of a lecture, and he no longer rolled his eyes at wrong answers. Instead, he said, "Thank you. Let's build from there." His students were performing better than ever, not because they feared him, but because they trusted him. Martha, the janitor, began tutoring adults in her neighborhood who never finished school. She called it math with warmth. Raphael, the older janitor, who once whispered, "I never thought I'd enjoy this," became her first student. He now taught his grandson fractions, using chocolate bars Jonas, the young busboy from the previous story who had followed Keanu's journey, launched an online channel called The Quiet Table. Each episode featured someone who had been overlooked, sharing how one act of recognition changed their life. Episode 1, Lisa. And then came the moment no one expected. The Nobel Committee sent a private letter. It was not for science, not for literature, but for peace they were considering, nominating Keanu Reeves for his contribution to global dignity in education. When asked later how he felt about it, Keanu simply said, "I'm just glad a few more kids feel like their questions matter now." One day, he returned to Garland Valley with no announcement. He walked past the same lockers, sat in the same back row, watched a new teacher ask her students, "What's something you want to learn, not because you have to, but because it would make you feel alive?" Keanu smiled, because that was the real victory. Not the awards, not the applause, but a room full of students who believed learning was theirs to own. As the school bell rang, Lisa walked over. "They keep asking when you'll speak again," she said. Keanu looked around and replied, "I already did." Asterisk. The equation that saved a life sign light spilled across the chalkboard in Mr. Donovan's classroom as the final bell rang. Most students rushed out, laughing and chatting. But Lisa stayed behind, quietly packing her books. She glanced out the window, wondering if he would come again. Keanu hadn't visited in 2 weeks. No word, no message, just the memory of his quiet smile and soft-spoken wisdom that still lingered like music after a song ends. But what no one knew, not Lisa, not Mr. Donovan, not anyone, was that Keanu Reeves had been missing for a reason, a deeply personal one. 3 weeks earlier, after returning from the Global Education Summit in Finland, Keanu had received a phone call, the kind of call that makes the world stop. A young man he once mentored, a boy named Noah, who had struggled with severe anxiety, had disappeared from his college dorm. Noah had been brilliant but fragile. The last message he had sent was to Keanu, 3 simple words: "I feel lost." Keanu dropped everything. He flew out that night, searched cities, spoke with Noah's professors, walked through libraries, parks and late-night cafes where they used to meet for tea. He blamed himself. "I should have stayed in touch," he whispered. But then, at a quiet community center, he found something. A notebook left behind on a bench. Inside were pages filled with numbers. Strange equations, diagrams, and words in the margins that said, "If only someone could solve me." Keanu sat on the bench and cried, not because he had failed, but because he finally understood. Noah wasn't asking to be fixed. He was asking to be found. He called every contact he had, organized a small search team with local volunteers, and 2 days later, they found Noah near a train station, cold, exhausted, but alive. Keanu didn't say, "I told you so," just wrapped a blanket around Noah and said, "I'm here." At the hospital, Keanu stayed with him for hours. They didn't talk much at first, but when Noah finally spoke, he said something that would change everything. "I kept hearing your words in my head. The problems are just stories waiting for new endings." Keanu held his hand. "We'll rewrite yours," he said softly. Back at Garland Valley, Lisa noticed something had changed in the class again. Students were speaking more freely. Mr. Donovan had started every class with a question that wasn't even math-related. Things like, "What's one thing you're proud of this week?" Or "What's a mistake that helped you grow?" Lisa liked that. So did the others. The classroom no longer felt like a test. It felt like a team. And then, on Thursday morning, it happened. Keanu walked through the door again, but this time, he wasn't alone. Noah walked beside him, thinner, quieter, but walking students looked up in surprise. Some recognized Keanu instantly. Others whispered, "Who's that guy with him?" Keanu smiled and said, "This is my friend. He's not here to impress you. He's here to learn with you." Noah nodded shyly. Lisa grinned during the lesson. Keanu sat in the back as usual. He didn't speak unless asked, but during a difficult equation on the board, Lisa froze halfway through. I'm not sure if the next step is factoring or substitution, she admitted. The room went silent. Keanu raised a finger and said, "What would happen if you tried both?" Lisa blinked, then slowly smiled. She tried, and it worked. The room kept not because it was right, but because she had kept going. After class, Keanu handed Lisa a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A math problem," he said, "but not the kind you're used to." When she opened it later, it didn't look like math at all. Just a sentence. How do you measure a mind? Beneath it, Keanu had written A. By its grades, B. By its speed, C. By its questions, D. By its kindness, choose wisely. She circled both C and D, then wrote underneath, "I think the answer is both, and also who we lift along the way." Word of Keanu's visit with Noah spread soon. Schools started asking for workshops, not with formulas, but with feelings. They called them mindset circles. Keanu called them safe boards, places where no idea was stupid and no student was invisible. One day, he was asked to speak to teachers from across the country. During the session, someone asked him, "What's the most important thing we can teach?" He didn't hesitate. "How to stay curious," he said, "especially about each other," and added, "and how to never treat a student like a number event in math." At Garland Valley, changes kept blooming. The school started a peer learning program. Malik taught coding to younger kids. Lisa started a math club called the Quiet Problem Solvers. Even the janitor Raphael was tutoring a small group of adults in the evening. When asked what inspired him, he simply said, "A man solved a problem on a board and gave me the courage to solve myself." Noah, once afraid of being seen, began helping other students who struggled with anxiety. He used math to explain emotions. "You're not broken," he told one boy. "You're just overwhelmed by unsolved variables." His group became known as the Math of Emotions, and it changed lives. Then came a letter from the United Nations, inviting Keanu to help design a new global education initiative. Their goal: to make sure dignity, creativity, and empathy become core subjects alongside math and science. Keanu didn't say yes right away. He first called Lisa. "What do you think?" he asked. She said, "Do it. Promise you'll still come back here," he laughed. "I'll always come back. It's part of the new initiative." Every student around the world would soon see this phrase on their report cards. "You are not just a grade. You are a growing mind." And beneath it, smaller letters, inspired by the story of a student named Lisa, a teacher named Donovan, a janitor named Raphael, and a man named Keanu. But in the end, it was never about him. It was about the seat he chose to sit in, the back row, the quiet row, the row most people never see. And from that seat, he changed the way the world solves problems, not just on paper, but in the heart. Asterisk, the final solution. It was a cloudy morning at Garland Valley High. Students were slowly filing into class, coats damp from the drizzle outside. The math classroom, once cold and silent, was now warm with quiet conversation and laughter. On the whiteboard, someone had written, "Today's equation: how many people can you lift with one act of kindness?" It was unsigned, but everyone knew whose idea it was. Keanu Reeves hadn't been back in a few weeks. He'd been traveling again this time, to help lead the global initiative on dignity-based learning. But the imprint of his visits remained in every corner of the school, and today he was coming back. But no one knew that yet. At the United Nations, Keanu had just finished his final proposal, a new curriculum framework that would be shared with dozens of countries. It was simple, clear, powerful. Each subject would now carry 3 layers: knowledge, compassion, curiosity. Math, for example, would not only include solving equations, but also understanding how numbers shape real lives. History would not just list events, but ask how we treat each other when power shifts. And science would not just explain the world, but challenge students to heal it. When he presented the idea, many in the room sat still, silent, sure. Then the room broke into applause. Not because it was flashy, but because it was true. Meanwhile, back at Garland Valley, Lisa was preparing for her big moment. She had been selected to give the closing speech at the school's first ever Student Voices event. She stood backstage, notebook in hand, nervous but determined. Mr. Donovan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" She smiled. "Only because someone once made me feel like I mattered." He nodded. "Then go help someone else feel the same." The gymnasium was packed. Students, teachers, parents, janitors, cafe workers, everyone. The lights dimmed slightly. Spotlight hit the small wooden podium. Lisa stepped up, and the room grew quiet. "I used to be scared of numbers," she began. "Not because they were hard, because they made me feel small." She paused, and then someone came into our class. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't wear fancy clothes. He didn't even stand in the front. He sat in the back. Changed everything. People leaned in. He didn't just teach us math. He taught us how to see each other, how to speak up, how to stay curious. She looked out at her classmates, and because of him, we no longer measure ourselves by test scores. We measure ourselves by how we treat people who feel invisible. A tear rolled down Mr. Donovan's cheek. Lisa smiled. "So today I want to say thank you, not just to him, but to all of you. Because now I know. Kindness is the real equation that solves everything." A quiet clap began, then more. Then the room erupted. Students stood, teachers stood, teachers stood, and just as the light shifted, a familiar figure entered the back of the gym, wearing his soft eyes scanning the room. Keanu Reeves had returned. Lisa's eyes lit up when she saw him. He simply raised his hand, placed it over his heart, and nodded. No speech, no spotlight, just presence that was always his power. After the event, students gathered around him. Malik asked, "What's next?" Keanu smiled. "College," Lisa said. "Mentoring Raphael," the janitor added. "Fixing the world," another whispered. Keanu chuckled. "You're all right." Then he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Before I go," he said, "I have one last problem for you." He unfolded the paper slowly. The class gathered close. It said, "***, a student was given no hope. A teacher was given no trust. A janitor was given no respect. They met one man with no degree, and everything changed. What's the formula? ***. They stared at it. Lisa was the first to speak. "It's not numbers." "No," Keanu said softly. "It's not. It's people," she whispered. He nodded. "People who choose to believe in each other. That's the formula." Later that day, he walked alone through the school garden, old, overgrown patch that students had begun. To clean up, there were fresh flowers now, and near the edge stood a simple wooden bench with a plaque that read, "The man in the back row." Beneath it, he didn't take the spotlight. He gave it away. Keanu sat down, watched students pass. No cameras, no crowd, just a few birds. A soft breeze, and the echo of a school that now understood something most people never learn. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to care the most. As he stood to leave, Lisa came running toward him. "Wait," she said, breathless. "Before you go." She handed him a notebook. It was full of equations, but also drawings and quotes, and notes from dozens of students. At the end, it simply said, "You taught us to solve more than math. You helped us solve ourselves." Why? Keanu hugged her gently. "Keep solving," he said, then turned, walked down the hallway, disappeared into the sunlight. But his lesson never left. Not from the school, not from the students, not from the world, because he didn't just solve the impossible problem. He taught them how to become the solution.